And welcome back, hockey fans, to another edition of the Preds video recap as the Nashville Predators' 5-game winning streak falls to the hands of the San Jose Sharks by a score of 5-4. You would have thought after 40 minutes they had the game, but those last 20 ended up biting them in the butt.
Oh yeah, even, what was it, maybe the last 10 minutes is when their lead really fell, but you could kind of see the writing on the walls in the third period that the Sharks were not going to give up that easy. You got to play 60 minutes, and the Predators played pretty good, but you saw they didn't play a complete third period. As we saw in tonight's game, the Jofa line basically was the only line that really amounted to anything. Yeah, Craig Smith had a beauty of a goal, but at the end of the day, that was the only real line that amounted to anything.
It was the Jofa line show because they did pretty much contribute for 3 goals and then also 4 assists.
So to me, this was almost kind of like watching 2 games. Just because the first 2 periods, the Predators really looked the better team, as you would expect a 7-1 team at the time to be. But then when it jumps to that third period, you could just tell the foot was off the gas. They did not look like they had that same drive that you would expect a team that had dominated for the first 2 periods to play with in the third period. You think it would be safe to say they got comfortable?
During the Western Canadian road swing, Brooks Bratton of the NashvillePredators.com interviewed Zach Ronaldo, and he said that the Predators were confident, not comfortable. It seemed like tonight, vice versa, was the theme of the third period. I will say, there's probably teams in this league that you could probably get away with when you're doing that, like, for example, like the Arizona Coyotes or the Detroit Red Wings, teams like that. But you can't be doing that against a team like the San Jose Sharks, especially when this could potentially be a Western Conference Final preview. When you have guys like you saw Brent Burns, Joe Pavelski, Erik Karlsson, the list goes on and on, Tomas Hertl, who got a goal tonight, you can't take your foot off the gas.
Let's go in reverse to the end of the second period whenever Evander Kane had that super late hit on Matthias Ekholm. And maybe me saying going back to the end of the second period was being generous because that was after the period. It was an intermission. Would you say that maybe that played a role in the Sharks kind of getting back into the game by sort of getting under the Predators' skin, changing the tempo to a more gritty style of hockey, which I think the Sharks play a little bit better?
We saw that, it was like, okay, that might be something to watch because it did kind of set the tone for the third period, at least for the Sharks' perspective. They're not slow pokes. They can play a speed game, but also they do have the bodies like, Evander Kane, he can throw his weight around. You talk about Joe Thornton. I mean, he doesn't play much of a physical game in my opinion, but, he has the size and strength to really throw his weight around, and also Brent Burns as well. I've seen Joe Pavelski before really fire up his group, and maybe there was an inspirational speech from Pavelski to get his group going, and, maybe that happened during the periods, but they definitely came in with a new persona, I guess you could say.
With the 2 goals that the Sharks had already scored in the period, do you think the writing was on the wall that they were probably going to complete the comeback and take the lead, or do you think that the Predators were not quite out of the game yet?
After that first goal, with Saros giving that one up and then Pavelski, I think it definitely changed the whole complexion of the game. That power play, I was wondering if that was going to end up burning the Preds, and that's what ended up being the case. You're up 4-2 with less than 10 minutes left. You got to lock down that game, and I don't think you can really define a game based on just one bad call. And like I said, I understand fans are going to do that, but that stuff happens in a season. You're going to get bad calls that go against you. You're going to have bad calls that are going to go for you. They had bad calls, I think, tonight that went their way, but they couldn't capitalize on the power play.
So the lasting impression of this game is going to be blowing a lead in the last 10 minutes of the game. 2-goal lead at that. I do think the pressure of getting to the net and getting rebounds, the Predators could have scored more goals in this game. A lot of goals are going to come from those sloppy areas, as we saw tonight. Forsberg scored one of the ugliest goals I think we've ever seen him score.
The Jofa line, I think, was probably the best example of what you're saying. They pretty much were all over that net front area. You said the Forsberg goal. Whiffed on the first shot, got the second one in. They did a great job of getting in those areas. It would have been nice to see other lines, like the Fiala-Turner-Smith line, get to those areas.
Yeah, and if you're a Predators fan, yeah, it stings now, but you got to remember, a loss in October is way better than a loss in the playoffs, or whatever month they end up facing each other, whether whether the Preds end up being a late seed or Western Conference Finals, loss now to the Sharks is better than losing in a series. So.
Well, yeah, like I said, it could serve as a learning lesson. Also, I mean, you don't want to dig yourself a hole at this point in the season. Like, honestly, I know it's awesome to see that the Nashville Predators are on top of the NHL standings or on top of, their division and everything like that. But really, at this point in the season, you just don't want to dig yourself a hole. That's really what matters at this point. You don't want to be like the Detroit Red Wings, who are right now 1-6-2. You don't want to be like that. You want to be at least hovering around, I think, 500. Our third star will go to Evander Kane, just like you brought up, 5 to 10 seconds after the second period. Pretty much Evander Kane giving a shot towards Ekholm, which pretty much started a little bit of a scuffle between both teams. And then you noticed pretty much going in the next period, that's when the Sharks really found their extra level of play. Now, maybe you could say that it was the Nashville Predators that kind of were sitting back a little bit. And then you also saw that Evander Kane had 2 assists on the last 2 goals of the game. So I think it's worth him being the third star of the game.
Yeah, I agree. It's one thing if you kind of poke the bear, so to speak, that is Mattias Ekholm, if you're a scrub. But if you're in the locker room, Evander Kane, who is a good offensive player, he does that. I think that lights an extra spark as well, just because he's someone that can contribute. It'd be let's say it's the Predators. If Philip Forsberg did that, it'd be a lot different than if Ronaldo did that. You know what I mean? It's just someone that maybe you don't expect as much, that isn't a straight grinder.
Our second star of the game goes to Victor Arvidsson. That guy was absolutely everywhere on the ice, it seemed like tonight. I mean, pretty much the most consistent player that you can ever think of in the National Hockey League, because he gives the same effort every single night. And then you saw tonight he had 2 goals that were at least huge at that moment, pretty much before that third period happened. But I think Victor Arvidsson for sure was the Predators' shining star of the night. And our first star of the game goes to Brent Burns, who scored the game-winning goal, receiving a sweet feed from Erik Karlsson as he set up at the left circle with the one-time shot past UC Saros, top corner, far side. And pretty much that's quintessential Brent Burns. No pun intended, but if you give him that time and space, he's going to burn you.
I think even though you said no pun intended, you know it's a pun.
And now it's time for preview for the Nashville Predators versus the New Jersey Devils, as this will be the last time that the Nashville Predators will be that close to the New York area, as they're only on this 1-game road trip before they come back to play the Edmonton Oilers at home on Saturday. But this is going to be a very interesting matchup, as you're playing a New Jersey Devil team that made the playoffs last season for the first time since the year that they went to the Stanley Cup Finals against the LA Kings and lost in 6 games. It's a very different looking squad, but we all know, especially from last season with Taylor Hall winning the Hart Trophy, that he could pretty much put that team on the back if that's what the New Jersey Devils needs to win some hockey games.
In my opinion, I don't think the Devils are maybe the top flight, and I don't know that they have the talent that the Predators do. But as we saw tonight, anything can happen in the NHL. Even 2-goal deficits when the Predators look in control. The Predators do not need to sleep on the Devils. I really am looking forward to seeing how this weekend is going to go for the Predators, because, as you mentioned, going up to New Jersey but then coming right back to the Bridgestone, it's going to be interesting to see if they have a little bit of fatigue, or travel fatigue at least.
It's great that you mentioned that, because this is such a weird week for the Nashville Predators. Schedule makers didn't give them any favors with pretty much coming off their Calgary and Edmonton road trip. They come home to play the San Jose Sharks tonight, like they did. And then they go to the Garden State to play the Devils, which you would have thought after playing the Rangers and Islanders they would have played them. But due to them playing in Europe, that's the reason why they couldn't schedule that game. And then also they come home to play the Edmonton Oilers. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw some fatigue from them. If they look a little bit flat, they just don't look in sync at all.
So if you're Laviolette, just to piggyback off what you said, you have to be preaching consistency throughout the team, because a good first line can carry you against some teams, but to be a great team in the NHL, all 4 lines have to be in sync. That's what some of these early games are for, is to kind of figure out what's going wrong, and they really need to fix that before they end up going on a worse streak than just a losing tonight. I think that does it for this edition of the Preds video recap.
If you want more Preds coverage, type in penaltyboxradio.com, click the link. You will find all the Preds articles you'll ever need in your entire life. You will find all the Preds podcasts that you'll ever need in your entire life. And then you'll have all of the Preds video recaps that you'll need for the rest of your life there on penaltyboxradio.com. My name is Jordan Cimini.
And I'm Ryan Nixon.
And we will see you after Preds versus Devils.